Since the beginning of time, humans have foraged food like meats and grains, as well as clean water. But what if they have a taste for their own kind? Have such a desire that they will kill anyone just to have human flesh? Well, that introduces you to the killers we'll be talking about today. First on our list is Jeffrey Dahmer. He was an American serial killer who was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jeffrey kinda had a normal childhood, other than the fact that his mother was extremely depressed and had attempted to take her own life. This made Jeffrey unsure of his parents' love, and with the extreme arguments between the couple, it made him feel alone. Jeffrey also displayed different behaviors after undergoing a double hernia surgery, making him severely withdrawn. Around this time, he was deeply intrigued by dead animals, and it became a shared interest with his father. But as he grew into a teenager, he was regarded as an outcast and soon became an alcoholic. Things got gradually worse, and with his new fantasy of dissecting men, it drove him to kill. And by the time he reached full adulthood, he started luring gay men from bars for sexual favors, before he would brutally murder them, perform several acts of necrophilia, and consume their flesh. Jeffrey would put body parts in the freezer so he could continue to eat them, and he kept his victims' skulls as trophies. Second is Alfred Packer, who was an American prospector and a self-proclaimed wilderness guide. He was born near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and had a very bitter relationship with his parents, so he made haste in his late teens to move out. Once he did, he moved to Minnesota and started a career in shoemaking. He eventually enlisted into the Union Army during the Civil War in 1862, but due to his epileptic seizures, he was honorably discharged. Afterwards, he moved towards the West, where he soured his reputation with this argumentative attitude, lying, and thievery. Around this time, Alfred claimed to be a prominent explorer and went on his first expedition as a guide. To be frank, it went terribly wrong, and Alfred committed his first act of cannibalism once the group ran out of food. He emerged out of the wilderness after 65 days before admitting the deeds he had done. He told multiple versions due to his pathological lying, but once the bodies were discovered, they realized Alfred was a man of extreme violence. The bodies had several chunks missing and had even been cut open and flayed. Third is Tyree Smith, who technically is not a serial killer, but the crime was so gruesome that I had to add him. Tyree grew up in Bridgeport, Florida, but other than that, much wasn't known about his upbringing. But in December of 2011, Tyree took a turn no one thought was humanly possible. Tyree had babbled endlessly about Greek gods and getting blood to his cousin, Nicole Rabb. The next evening, Tyree returned, but he had specks of blood on his pants, and he was carrying bloody chopsticks and a bloody axe. Tyree then admitted to killing a homeless man, later identified as Angel Gonzalez, and that he ate the man's brain and eyeballs while drinking sake in a cemetery. The body was found a month later, and Tyree was arrested shortly after, but due to his mental instability, he was sent away to a psychiatric hospital. Otis Toole is second to last on this list, and he was a serial killer who operated between 1960s and the 1980s and had a partner in crime named Henry Lucas. His childhood was full of torment, incest, and rape. His grandmother, who he claimed was a Satanist, showed him terrible things such as grave robbing. This is where Otis believed that his urge to kill came from, and ever since he became an adult, he got addicted to killing and barbecuing his victims. He especially liked the ribs and drinking their blood. Once Otis was caught, he admitted to killing 108 people, but the count hasn't been proven. And last on our list is Albert Fish. He was an American serial killer who boasted about having kills in every state. Albert had a family full of mental disorders, and his father had been 75 years old when Albert was born. By the age of 12, Albert had a strange relationship with a youth who introduced him to drinking urine and feces. He'd also enjoyed watching other boys undress, which drove him to believe that he was gay. As he aged into a young adult, he had become obsessed with genital mutilation and did it on a partner he'd been dating named Thomas Bedden. Although he didn't kill the man, it did influence Albert to become a serial killer. Shortly after, he got married to a woman and had children, but the marriage didn't last long. He was left with all the kids, and he soon began to indulge in self harm, which was sticking needles in his groin. He also spanked himself with a nail studded paddle, but he quickly escalated in the early 1920s to plucking black children and kids with mental disorders off the streets. He tortured, mutilated, and murdered his victims and claimed no one would miss them. I mean, in hindsight, he was kinda right because no one questioned them being missing until years later. It wasn't until he abducted Grace Budd that he indulged in cannibalism. It's said that he ate most of Grace before he was even caught. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.